Hey there, Daniel 395 Junkie here. Here to give you a quick little walk around of my 2016 JKU Rubicon. Gonna give a quick little video on our 2016 Jeep JKU. We call her Bele. We call her Bele for short. We're real happy. We've had her about for 4 years now, and we've done a bunch of different upgrades to it. So had some requests from previous YouTubes and comments on my Instagram, which by the way, you can subscribe by clicking the bottom right of this video right now. I appreciate your support. But we'll go quick little walk around over all the upgrades we did, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. But one of the first upgrades we did on this Jeep is this bumper that we got from Extreme Terrain. It's a barricade. It has it's steel, which is a little bit unfortunate, only because in retrospect I probably would have went with aluminum, because we've got so much weight on this vehicle that we've added that at some point I got to start thinking about replacing some of these parts and going aluminum, or just be real cognizant of anything else that I add to it. At the same time, actually, I got these KC Highlight Gravity fog lights, which are great because you know, whenever you get these new stock Jeeps, the headlights are terrible. So we replaced those, and at the same time we replaced with the 7-inch KC Gravity headlights. On top of the bumper, I went with the Smitty built X2O winch with the synthetic rope, and it's really cool because it can be remote control, or you can use the hard wire any way you want to work it. Right here we have the I believe it's a rock hard license plate holder. So in order to get to the winch, because in California they got so many laws around here, it's hard to keep up, but you have to have a front license plate. So what I had to do is I had to buy this from I believe it was rock hard. I'll double check and I'll leave comments below, but it's cool. It's a little lanyard. You take off these screws here, and all you got to do is remove the other side, and this thing will drop right down. Set those aside so you don't lose it, and that gets out of the way. I have the Factor 55 shackle, and then underneath, I'm not sure if you can see, but I also went with the Barricade front skid plate. This really isn't a huge upgrade, but I do have one of my GoPros mounted on the front, so when we hit the trails you can simply just control it from the inside via Wi-Fi or Bluetooth and start rolling and cutting whenever you want. A couple more things in the front I want to talk about is our Pro 6 KC light bar, which we've used a couple different times, and I'll put a clip in right now where you can see where we use it up in Coyote Flats up in the Sierra Nevadas, and thing works great. It's like you go from just regular headlights and you flip that thing on, it's almost like daylight. It's amazing. It works really good. And just recently on the last trip, I installed the Crazy Beaver shovel with the high lift jack on the hood, and I had some reservations about that. I wasn't sure if I really liked it there, but I don't have very many choices. You could put it on the back, but when you swing open the tailgate, I've already cracked my tail light once, so I figured I needed to find a new place for it. That's about all we have in the front, other than, of course, these, I believe these were Rugged Ridge latches I added on. And because you all know, if you have a JK without replacing those latches, they're real flimsy, and it's terrifying when you're going on the freeway or the highway and the wind starts picking up and it starts fluttering. So this was one of our early upgrades as well. Alright, so let's get under the hood so you guys can see all the tons of upgrades I've done under here. Most of it's all stock. I'm too terrified to add anything to it as far as mechanical, and no superchargers, no chips, nothing like that. I want this thing to be as stock as possible so that I don't have any problems with it out on the trail. It's easy to work on. But there are a couple upgrades that I did on this thing which are worth pointing out, so kind of get into them right now. One of the first things that I did when I started adding all the accessories and the lights is I added the S-Pod, which if you don't know what it is, you kind of run all your wires for all your accessories to right here. From here, there's a single wire that goes inside of the Jeep where you could push some buttons, but it also works off of my phone, Bluetooth, where you can turn the lights on and off. I have the fridge controlled off of it, my rock lights, you name it. So that's really easy, and a single place to keep really clean wiring, which I try to do as best possible. Not really much to look at right here, but it is worth pointing out. I did upgrade to the TerraFlex Delta brakes, and with doing that, I upgraded my brake booster, larger master cylinder, and of course the larger reservoir, which made all the difference in the world. So we did that. We did all those upgrades ourselves, and then really the last thing to talk about underneath the hood is we did the Genesis dual battery conversion, which was really cool. I went with the option of the G screen, which is wired to the inside of the Jeep. I'll show you that in a little bit, but what that does, it basically will read you out what your current voltage is on both your main cranking battery and your accessory battery. And you know, for obvious reasons, the reason we did this is we go, you know, overlanding, generally pretty far away from anybody else, and you know, most of the times it's just me and my wife, or my wife and my kids, and I don't want to get in a position where I ever can't start the Jeep. Sure, I've got a jump box, and you know, I've never had to use it. That's more of an insurance policy. But when we're camped at the same place for 2 days, 3 days, and that refrigerator's running the whole time, it's really nice to have that accessory battery, which it will only run on. I take that back. It runs on both batteries while you're using your auxiliaries, but once the main cranking battery hits a voltage that is getting to be a little bit too low, it'll only run off of the accessory. It switches itself to only pull from the accessory battery, and we've never gotten to that point. It's never been that low. But you know, I hear you can run these things for 5-6 days without moving and still have plenty of power to start the vehicle when it's time to go home. So as you can see, that's you know, it's a little bit of insurance again. Install was a little bit difficult. I wouldn't even say difficult, it was time consuming. You got to take everything out, you got to take the air box out, you got to do some cutting, but overall it was a simple install that I did in the garage by myself. So that's about it under the hood. As you can see, there's not a whole lot. It's mostly stock, which is the way I like it. Plenty of power to get up the hill, plenty of brakes to stop, and everything else, you know, we're not hot rodding this thing anyway. So let's go on the other side and I'll show you what we got. All right, so let's talk about what we have for lift kit. Right now what I'm running, previously I had a real cheap 2.5 inch. It was just coils and shocks, and it was a throwaway. Of course it wasn't my ultimate lift. I thought it was at the time, but you know, you start building these things and it's an addiction. It's a thrill. It's a passion that I have. I really enjoy the outdoors and working on the Jeep, turning wrenches in the garage. But as far as lift kit, what I'm running right now is a 3.5 inch rock crawler X Factor, and that pretty much replaces your upper, lower control arms, front and rear track bar. All of those items are adjustable. It comes with adjustable front sway bar links. But with the Rubicon, you know, you have the electronic disconnect. So some of the features about this lift I didn't use, like the quick disconnect. But overall, I'm super happy with the lift kit. All right, so what we'll do now, we'll go a quick walk around on the side, and we'll start with these Poison Spider crusher flares. Amazing. You can stand on these things, you can jump on it. I've used it a bunch to help, you know, get the old Rooftop 10 up on the front and the rear, so they're very sturdy. They're in steel though, so once again, I in retrospect probably could have went with the aluminum, but I went with the steel only because it came in the black. I've never painted them. It looks good. At some point I might need to put a clean paint job on it, but I'm real happy with it. So these are the Poison Spider crusher flares. Inside, they have the Poison Spider inner fender liners, which are vented, which just kind of cleans it up here. I know some guys roll around without inner fender flares, and There's no reason why you need them. You know, some will say that because of all the water and mud, you got some sensitive electronics there. But I've seen YouTubes of guys that say they're on their 5th Jeep doing hardcore mudding and off-road and they've never had a problem. So to each his own. Right here, the 37-inch BFG KM3s along with the XD wheel and bead locks. These mud terrains are awesome. We're up in the snow right now, and you know, we did come down a trail that was solid ice, so there's nothing you can do about ice whenever you're out on the trail. But when you're in mud, sand, and you know, softer snow, you can air down to 6-7 pounds and not have a problem. So that's pretty extreme conditions. So real happy with this whole setup. But again, in retrospect, it's likely that I probably would just go non-bead locks, only because, you know, per wheel it's another 20-25 pounds that you're carrying, and stopping this thing is, you know, it got to be a real burden until I decided to upgrade the brakes to the Delta brake kit. All right, so now on the inside, what you may not be able to see is the Falcon 3.3 shocks. But you know, with the adjustments, it has 3 different adjustments: hard, medium, and soft. And around town, I run it in soft or medium. When I have the Rooftop 10 on here or doing some rock crawling, I move it all the way over to 3, which is a pretty firm ride. So real happy with that. Once again, I went with the rugged ridge through extreme terrain on the Nerf bars, but they also act as, you know, rock sliders. So I've been on some pretty good rocks on this. Some people would suggest that maybe it's sticking out a little bit too far. You might get hung up. Never had that problem, but I'm sure it might happen one of these days. But it kind of works as also some running boards. You know, my wife and I were, some would say we're vertically challenged, you know, but it does help getting in and out of this thing, and it runs the length of it. So that's about it on the side. Really the only other thing that I want to talk about, you know, which you can kind of see from this side, is the full belly skid that I did of Arctic Industries. They are full aluminum, covers everything from the transmission, transfer case, gas tank, you name it. It's about as full skid as you can get. And when I did that upgrade, I also replaced the stock cross member that you get from the factory. And if you ever are fortunate enough and want to replace your cross member, put those things side by side. You know, the aftermarket Arctic Industries compared to the factory one, it's night and day. And you know, that's really the foundation of your undercarriage that kind of keeps everything straight and level. And you know, when you're hitting some of those crazy rock gardens, it's an important piece that I figured I wanted to do now when I was putting the skid plate on, rather than have to tear that all off later and put that back on. In any case, it was an easy install. Did it myself. You know, I think it took me 4 or 5 hours in the garage. You know, you get to those steel skid plate packages, and it just gets to be a real hassle. And with my steel front and rear bumpers, the steel crusher flares, I figured it's about time I put something on here that's a little bit lighter weight and in aluminum. So. All right, so on the rear here, what we have, again, nothing extraordinary. A couple upgrades worth mentioning. We did the barricade bumper again. It's a steel bumper. I believe it was called the Trail Force. Got that from extremeterrain.com. Along with that, I upgraded the rear tail lights, which these are JW speakers, and they're a whole lot brighter than your stock ones. And not a huge necessary upgrade, but nonetheless, it was something clean. I like the way they looked, and they work really good. We did, of course, when we go camping and we go overlanding, got to have plenty of water. So we have our Rotopax mount that goes around the spare tire. We have two 2-gallon waters here, plus we usually have the road shower, which holds another 7 gallons. So we got plenty of water, but on quick little trips, we just run with these Rotopax. Of course, we got our trasharoo. Always be sure to pack it in, pack it out. You know, we're up in the San Bernardino Mountains right now, and I'll be honest with you, this is one of the cleanest campsites that we found to, you know, pull over and do this quick little walk around. But there's a lot of trash everywhere, so keep the trails clean. Give a hoot, don't pollute. Trasharoo, and then of course we picked these up recently. I was never real sure if I was the guy that's going to want to have these max tracks with me. You know, they always seem pretty extreme when you got the big tires and the winch, and that's all fine and dandy, but if you have nothing to winch up to, and if you're in some deep snow or mud, I bought these when we did snow camping a couple weeks ago, last week, I forget, and I didn't have to use them, but rather than try to have to dig myself out is a cheap insurance policy. Let me rephrase that. It's an insurance policy. They're not cheap, but I've read nothing but great reviews on them, and I'd hate to get myself caught in a situation where it's just me and my wife and spend hours and hours digging out. So hopefully one day they'll come in handy and I'll be able to you know, put them to the test. But I did have to upgrade. Anytime you go above a 35-inch tire, it's important that you replace your spare tire carrier, because the extra weight between the 37-inch tire and of course the bead lock. Then you add 4 gallons of water, which is almost another 30 pounds. Trash can starts getting full, so it starts adding up, and you don't want to put all that undue stress on the stock carrier. So this is the EVO spare tire carrier that, again, all these installs I did myself, and I'm by far not a real mechanically competent individual when it comes to the garage, but you know, I've done enough to be able to save myself a ton of money, which is important. And a couple last things worth mentioning, which really aren't huge upgrades, but pretty happy with, is some time ago I put a rear view camera, reverse camera on this thing. And with my previous spare tire carrier, I put it on the spare tire carrier, but when I put this new one on, it didn't really have any room. So what I did is I bought a little Reese hitch cover, drilled a little hole in it, and you can see the spare tire camera, the backup camera is right there. So, and just one last thing worth mentioning is we're gonna get to the rooftop tent and the lights here in a little bit, but some people have asked, you know, the best way of doing wiring from your roof rack, and there really isn't a really good way. But what I did is I ran all the wiring to the rear here and combined it all into, you know, one cable right here. I drilled a little hole here, put a grommet there, never had any leaks. And if I didn't go through drilling the top when I put the roof rack on, I probably would have been a little nervous, but that was, you know, easy enough, so I had no problem doing it there either. Let me show you what we got going on the inside here. All right, so let's talk about the rear here. Some of the upgrades we did, and this is mostly just for camping. I added this Outback Adventures, what they call the Trail Gator, which obviously a play on words. You could use it on the trail and it goes on your tailgate. But it's a nice stainless steel table here that, you know, generally we'll put some our stove on here, cook our morning coffee or breakfast if you're using the stove. Has a fold out cutting board, which comes in really handy when you're preparing dinners or, you know, breakfast or lunch for that matter. And then when you're done, you just pretty much fold it out of the way, and you go on your merry way. And people have asked if it makes a lot of creaking or noises, and no. The Jeep makes plenty of noises regardless, so even if it did, it wouldn't bother me. I mean, you own a Jeep, you understand what I'm talking about. Inside here, we've got the Dometic 40-quart fridge, which one of the best upgrades we did. Spend the money, get yourself a fridge if you're doing multiple day camping trips, because to not run out of ice and have soggy food, it's really, really nice. It comes in handy. And of course I have it on the Dometic slide, so all you do is slide it right out, open it up, and you got plenty of cold food and don't have to worry about running to town to get any ice. And the cool thing about this is when we first got the fridge, I had it thrown back here, take it in and out, and it'd be, you know, moving around on the trail. So I wanted to find a way of permanently mounting it. So I cut out a nice piece of, I think it's, I don't know, 3/8 inch, half-inch plywood. Fits in here perfect. I cut a hole out for the subwoofer, and it goes all the way to the back. So when you're throwing your gear in here, you don't worry about it getting the carpet all dirty and messed up. But pretty proud of this upgrade. It fits like a glove, and it actually is secured by the stock screw holes that the tie downs used to go on. So I found the same size screw, and it mounts in there perfect. And then of course on the side, when you have a Jeep and you're doing overlanding, you know, it's important that you find a spot for everything. And so what we'll do is, you know, we kind of throw some of our shackles here. We've got, we just throw some towels, paper towels. We got our recovery straps on this side. Toolboxes will usually go there or inside the back seat. Up high, I found these cool little ties from REI, and it's a great place where I put my splitting axe for whenever we need to get some wood. On the side here, I've got smaller axes. Keep our knives here, soap, fire extinguisher. Always need to make sure you have a fire extinguisher. You never know when you're going to need it for you or somebody else. And of course, we put our, our Kelty chairs and table right there. So everything's got its little spot. And then when we pack up, we usually, find nooks and crannies for some of the other stuff. But that's about it on the back. All right, so inside the Jeep, got some things to talk about here. And what we'll start with is probably one of my favorite upgrades I did, because we have, as you can see, a bunch of different toys and gadgets up here. And this is, I'm not sure if you can see from the video, but this is a Vector off-road accessory docking bar. On this bar, what we have is we have our Spot X GPS for emergencies. You could send and receive text messages. We've got our iPad, which generally we use for our Gaia GPS apps. We never ever watch NFL games on this while driving home from camping. On the other side, you can't really see, but I have two of these 67 designs for our phones. My phone goes here. I have one for my wife's there. And of course, we have a little GoPro mount here for the rare occasion that we do some videoing inside the car. Up top, if you get a little higher, this is the S-Pod push button that I was talking about, where right now you have the fridge on. We've got the roof lights. We have reverse lights, the rock lights, and a couple other lights I'll show you in a little bit. And of course, we have our radios right here, our ham radios right here, which we don't have our ham licenses, so it's important to note that we will only use it on emergency cases only. And last thing we did is the bed rug headliner kit. And some people will put these in here for extra insulation, cut back on the noise. And does it work? I don't know. I think so. I think it cuts down a little bit on the noise. As far as temperature wise, I like to think it does on the hot summer days. I really like them because it cleans up the top real nice. It added sound benefit. I think the acoustics are a little bit better when we have the stereo on. Or all of that is completely in my head and they don't do anything at all. But what they do is my patch game's pretty weak right now, but I'm getting there. It gives you a place to put, as we go different locations, we collect patches and we throw them up here and it sticks to them really, really cool. So like that a lot. And you have the two front here for the Freedom panels. You have one for above the rear seat, and then there's another headliner for above the rear cargo area. This is something else I added, which I would highly encourage if you guys have accessories up here. I've got a dash cam here. I've got all these accessories that need power, and I didn't want to have a bunch of wires coming down here to the 12 volt down here. So what I did is I pulled the dash apart and I tied into an accessory power. So and I included this USB power port here, which has two different plugs. So pretty much everything runs to here, and I have another splitter down here. So I can run like 5 different things here with this splitter right here, which is for 2 iPhones and all kinds of different accessories. So you can find all this stuff on Amazon. Probably, again, one of the simpler, less expensive upgrades, but probably one of the most handy whenever you're doing some traveling. Something you could easily do in the garage if you're somewhat handy with electrical. So that's about it on the inside. Let me show you what I got going on in the back. Not a whole lot, but there are some things that are worth mentioning. As I mentioned, storage is really at a premium in these Jeeps. So what we do is we try to use every nook and cranny. We've got our first aid kit right here, which you should always have whenever you're off-roading or just driving around town. You never know when you're going to need it, and thank God we've never needed to use it, but one of these days I'll do a video on everything that's inside of it. It's extraordinary. It's a lot of different things that I don't know how to use, so maybe I do my own research and YouTubing to figure out how to put whatever. On the back seat on the other side, you can't really see, but it's a little trash can that we use while traveling so that we don't have a complete mess on the inside here by the time we get to our destination. And of course, we have the attic area over here, which we store all of our gear for, you know, whether it's jackets or whether it's you name it. You can put a lot of storage items up there that kind of keeps it out of the way. And that's from Blue Ridge Overland. And just a couple last things that is important to always have. I know, you know, I mentioned we have the Gaia earlier. You've got, but we like traveling the Eastern Sierras, so we picked these up last year from Tierra del Sol, which is over there by Ocotillo, Salton Sea. So if you guys head out there this year, they were super cheap. They gave a deal on them, and we've got anywhere up from the Eastern Sierra, from down low by like Lone Pine all the way up to, you know, Lake Tahoe. So, you know, it's always good to have some manual ways of navigating if in case you're electrical or, you know, you run out of power, which these days probably isn't real likely, considering one of our best upgrades we've ever done is the Jackery. This thing is amazing. Powers all of our electrical items, plug our cell phones in there, recharge the drone batteries, recharge the GoPro. So this is really, really important to have. And then on the other side, of course, we just use it for more storage, where we put cookbooks and, you know, things that we need while we're out on the trail. So that's about it on the inside of the Jeep. What I'd like to do is just kind of do a quick little walk around and show you guys what we're working with on top. We've got the KC floodlights up here, you can see, which are wired to the S-Pod. We have two on this side, we have two on the rear, and then we have two on the passenger side. And we really mostly use those when we're at camp for some extra lighting, and it'll light it up real nice. And if it gets too bright, I do have the KC rock lights down below. Again, push of the button on the S-Pod, and, you know, it gives some nice ambient light to where it's not blinding you, but if it's pitch black outside, you can kind of see your way around camp. Up here, what we did is we upgraded the tie rod and drag link, and that really was great when it came to stiffening up the suspension. You got your tie rod right here. Drag link you can't really see because of the skid plate here. And the other thing you can't see is my Falcon steering stabilizer, which there really wasn't anything wrong with the stock one, but I figured since I was running Falcon on everything else, I'll go ahead and throw it on there. And that was a good little upgrade. It really, all of these components stiffen up the suspension great, so it rides a lot more like stock than it did before. And of course, one of the last things to mention that you can really see is the rock hard differential covers on the front and on the rear diff, which you know, when we did some rock crawling up in Big Bear recently, they came in real handy. So that's about it in the front. So let's show you the tent. We'll save the best for last. All right, so last but not least is our new rooftop tent. We previously had the ARB rooftop tent, which was great. Didn't really have any complaints about it. It was easy to put on, put off. The real struggle I had with that, with the cover that they had on it, is where we go camping most of the year, it's up in the Eastern Sierras, or this time of the year when it's the winter, wherever you're at, the material, it's super thick, kind of like a nylon, and kind of plasticky. It stiffens up to where if you really got to fight it, you got to struggle to get it on so it's a nice tight fit. And when it's cold outside, your fingers stop working, it starts to hurt. And honestly, that's about the best excuse I can come up with to get this thing, which is amazing. This is the iCamper Skycamp 2.0. It's probably almost 50% more room compared to the ARB. They claim it's the size of a king-size bed. And of course, being the hardcover, it's real easy to put up and down. So we'll see how smooth I can do this, so you guys can really get a good sense of how simple it is. So let me get going, starting with unlocking it. just like that, it's set up. One of the coolest features this has is these adjustable eye hooks, which you can hang anything up here. You can hang lights up here, speaker, you name it. iCamper does sell what we have here, which is a shoe storage, so we can put our dirty shoes in there before we go up there. And they also have something similar to this for this side, for just additional storage for cell phones or battery chargers or lights, whatever you want to put up there. But let me show you guys inside. Come on. And just like that, you're inside the tent. iCamper is pretty proud of their memory foam. I believe it's 1.5 inches of memory foam, and between this and our heavy-duty 0-degree sleeping bag, it's plenty of cushion. We don't have any problem with it. We cannot travel. Those of you that have this tent or are contemplating it, you might want to know how much blankets and sleeping bags and linens you can put up here. You really can't. There's not a whole lot of room. Generally what we leave up here are, the king size mattress. This side here folds up and it goes over on that side, and we leave our 2 pillows up here and the base for the Mr. Heater. So but some of the cooler features up here is, you got the really nice memory foam. You got a skylight, which we never used to have with the ARB, and if you ever try to get in your tent during the day and maybe try to read a book or do something, it's kind of tough. It gets a little dark, your eyes get strained a little. So as soon as we got this tent and we realized that it had the sunroof there, it was amazing. It helps when we're trying to do some stargazing or just during the day. We're probably going to hang out here for a little bit today, read a book, and hang out in here with the heater on because it is pretty cold out here. But that's about it. Well, we sure hope you enjoyed our walk around on Bele. It's been a real pleasure building it and showing you guys some of the upgrades that we did. And one of our future videos, maybe we'll go over all of our camping gear and give you guys a little bit more detail about that. So in any case, thanks so much for watching, and please click subscribe and share with all your friends.